We debated for weeks which wide receiver the Panthers would take, and we got our answer on Thursday night as they traded up to draft Xavier Legette. Now the question is, can he become a primetime weapon for Bryce Young?
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Fridays throughout the offseason, I'm right here on the show answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions, either at me or DM me to get those questions into me. Now, today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. On today's show, we're going to focus on the Carolina Panthers first round pick. That's right. The Panthers traded up, got a first round pick. We spent all that time complaining. Maybe I didn't. You spent all that time complaining about the Panthers not having a first round pick. And it turns out they got a first-round pick, traded up from 33 to 32, only traded a fifth for a sixth, really, to get up one spot with Dan Morgan and really our old friend Brandon Beane from Buffalo to get their guy Xavier Legette and to get the fifth-year option, which could be important, could not be important. We'll see how Legette's career plays out in Carolina. But going into the draft, we all expected at 33 or wherever the Panthers were going to select first for them to get a wide receiver. I would have loved to see them get A.D. Mitchell or Keon Coleman, and I'm sure you would have liked to have seen them get Ladd McConkey or another wide receiver that was taken later on. But their guy was Xavier Legette. There was plenty of signs pointing to Legette being the guy here in Carolina. The large contingency down in Columbia for his pro day, what he was able to do at Bank of America Stadium to start off the season against North Carolina last year on Labor Day, and just overall, his physical attributes and his talent this past season where he exploded at South Carolina. So he's now here in Carolina, and the hope is, and the expectation for this coaching staff in his front office is, he's going to be one of the primary targets for Bryce Young, not just in 24, but in 25, 26, 27, add the fifth-year option, 28, and beyond. That's why you trade up into the first round to get a wide receiver who you could have gotten even at 33. Now, you do it really for the fifth-year option, but you also do it because you have such a belief in who this guy can be that you're expecting that one day you're going to have to pay him a ton of money, and you want to have that flexibility. They believe in Xavier Legette, and I'm excited what he can do here in Carolina. The one thing about him, though, is, have we seen a career like the one Xavier Legette had at South Carolina for a player that then became a first-round pick in the NFL draft? I truly do not believe that has been the case. Went over this for a little bit of time on Monday's show, reacting, give my initial thoughts to the 2024 draft class here in Carolina. He's been through a lot, y'all. And everybody goes through things, but this man especially has gone through a ton before he even got to college, before he even stepped foot on campus there at the Horseshoe in South Carolina. Losing his mother, Anita Reeves Legette, back in July 2015 to a long fight with breast cancer. Then a couple years later, lost his father, Anthony, back in March of 2019. Neither one of them saw him graduate high school. Neither one of them saw him play a collegiate snap at South Carolina. And unfortunately, neither one of them will get to see him don the black and blue in Bank of America Stadium, taking a snap for the Carolina Panthers. And I hate that for him. Truly do. Cannot imagine being his age and losing my parents at that point in time. My parents still here. I can't even imagine not having them around anymore. So my heart certainly goes out to what he had to go through. This guy, Legette, who is really a talented player coming out of Mullen, South Carolina. And it took him a while to really realize that talent. Going back to his freshman season at South Carolina in 2019, the expectation from then Gamecocks head coach Will Muschamp was that he was going to gray shirt, which means he would not have played football in 2019. He would not have gone on scholarship until 2020 in the spring. Instead, He ends up enrolling on time, and he does play that season. He appeared in 11 games his freshman year, including 3 starts, caught 9 passes for 80 yards, 1 touchdown. As a freshman in the SEC, not anything spectacular, but not really anything you're going to look down upon, as it takes time for those young players to get an opportunity and to be able to actually produce on the field once they do get that opportunity. 2020, Xavier Legette got more of an opportunity. He started in all 6 games his sophomore season that he played, the first 6, before going down with a hamstring injury that cost him the final 4 games of that pandemic season. He had 113 yards on 7 receptions. So again, got opportunities, but didn't really do much with it there in 2020. And that was a tough situation where Colin Hill, the Colorado State transfer, was their quarterback. Also was a global pandemic, and we weren't sure we were going to play football that fall at all. Now, the SEC, there was no way they were not going to play football down south. As we know, football, especially in the South and college-wise, is a religion. So Xavier Legette didn't do much in that season. 2021, Legette had a motorcycle accident that cost him a couple of games. Now, it's been described as motorcycle, but really it was a scooter accident when reading David Cloninger of the Charleston Post and Courier, who covers the Gamecocks. So scooter, motorcycle, whatever it was, some sort of auto accident, and they laughed about it. He got a nickname from that incident that was given to him by, God, I got to find this. I'm doing this live now, but I totally missed this. They gave him a nickname for what happened to him in that situation that makes it seem not to be as serious as a lot of people make it out to be, as a reason why Legette was unable to perform early on in his career at South Carolina. As again, scrolling down here we go. Nickname, they get Easy Rider. That's the nickname he was given after being injured. Pete Lembo was a special teams coordinator at the time, gave him the nickname Easy Rider after the injury. So not something that was that serious. He did miss 2 games, and when he came back, he had a kickoff return for a touchdown, but still not a lot of damage done in that season. Get to his 4th year at South Carolina, return to full strength, and only caught 11 passes during the regular season. Did break out in that bowl game against Notre Dame, 7 receptions, 78 yards, 2 touchdowns, had a kickoff return against Texas A&M that year. But really that bowl game against the Fighting Irish down in the Gator Bowl in Jacksonville was the first glimpse of this is who Xavier Legette can be if he stays healthy and if he really works hard enough and produces on a consistent basis, which you did not see in his first 4 years. His first 4 years at South Carolina, 42 receptions, 423 yards, 5 touchdowns. Last year at South Carolina, starting with that game against North Carolina, he blew up. Became one of the best stories in the country as far as looking at the wide receiver position. 71 receptions, 1,255 yards, 7 touchdowns. The man was a threat for the deep ball. He was a threat to take a short pass long, clocked at the fastest speed by any player in college football last season. Size, speed, versatility, athleticism. He has it all. And really, the thing that he has that really propelled him, it feels like, is that want to. He was asked about, why did you not produce early on in the career? He talked that he wasn't mature enough, that also he wasn't healthy. But then he realized, kind of the light bulb goes off. This is my opportunity. If I want to be an NFL player, I want to keep playing this game that I love, I got to do it now. And he took that opportunity with Juice Wells, the all-SEC first-team receiver from the year prior, who was out with an injury last year and became the Gamecocks' #1 guy. And in doing that, became only the 5th Gamecocks receiver to surpass 1,000 yards in a season. Sidney Rice, Alshon Jeffrey, Farrell Cooper, Sterling Sharp. Those are some damn good players. Sharp, a multi-time Pro Bowler, All-Pro in the NFL with the Packers. Farrell Cooper's had some up and downs in the NFL, but Alshon Jeffrey, really good. Sidney Rice was great. The wore number 4 at South Carolina under Steve Spurrier. Some really good players that he was able to join on that list of 1,000-yard receivers at South Carolina. Now, the 5th-year option, that's something we talked about when it came to Xavier Legette, and that being a big reason why they took him. Dan Morgan had this to say about it. That 5th-year option was definitely important. I think that was obviously a big reason to trade up into the first round. Besides the player, we loved Xavier, everything he brought, not only as a person, but as a player, his ability to attack the ball when he's in the air, his ability to run with it after the catch. Pro-style offense, too. Big reason why they wanted to take him. Dowell Loggins, who used to be the Jets coordinator, the Bears coordinator, really one of the worst NFL coordinators we've seen over the last decade. He went down to Arkansas, coached tight ends, then came to South Carolina last year to be the OC under Shane Beamer. Once Marcus Satterfield, a former assistant offensive line coach here in Carolina under Matt Rule, decided to join Matt Rule out in Nebraska and he meant a ton to Xavier Legette and to his work ethic at South Carolina, and really not just his work ethic, but his development this past season. And the fact that he ran a pro style type of offense, kind of verbiage that they're going to need to know at the NFL level, that also attracted the Carolina Panthers to Legette. As this was said by Dave Canales, he's a guy that I know, and he credited him for, giving him exposure in a pro style type of offense. And the way that they used him this past year was impressive. He was able to articulate all that. He was able to teach our coaches what he was doing, what that offense was, and all that part was really impressive as well. So being able to see what he looks like in a pro style offense, articulate what he was able to do in a pro style offense, and understand the offense as a whole, that attracted Carolina to Xavier Legette outside of just the production and the size and the speed, all the traits that he brings at maybe a wide receiver one position down the road here in Carolina. And we've seen a lot of these comparisons now that he's a DK Metcalf type of guy. Now, DK, he's got 3 inches on him. He's got a couple more pounds on him as well. DK was a physical freak coming out of Ole Miss. And looking at Xavier Legette, also a physical freak coming out of South Carolina. I don't know if he's as freakish as DK, but man, that guy is huge. And the speed to be able to move that fast, be that big, it's impressive. You cannot deny that at all. I don't know if I want to put those kind of expectations on him just based on what DK's done so far in the NFL. Now, there is an interesting comparison to make about that, but quick quote here from Dave Canales on the DK Metcalf comparisons. Other than being a big, fast guy, it's a different player. It's a different type of player. I don't really want to get into too much of the comparisons, but I definitely do see some of the physical traits. This is a rare combination of athletic ability. Both of them great athletes. And if they weren't great athletes, they would not be playing in the National Football League. But this is a comparison I'd rather make. DK wasn't the primary option when he was down at Ole Miss. He played on some 6-6, 5-7 teams, but his teammates at the time were A.J. Brown, who is one of the top 5 best receivers in the NFL and was the best receiver at Ole Miss at that point in time as well, and did not get a bunch of the draft pub leading up. And surprise, surprise, he's been a better player than DK, who's also been a really good player in the league. Van Jefferson, who's bounced around a couple of teams in the NFL. He was also there in Oxford at the same time. Dawson Knox, tight end for the Bills, was on that team. And DeMarcus Lodge, a name that you may not have heard of unless you watch Ole Miss football or really follow college football closely. He was a number 2 wide receiver on those teams in 20 I forget what years it was. Those 2 years where DK really was a part of the offense, and DK was the third option as a wide receiver during that period of time. So looking at his stats, his final 2 years at Ole Miss, he had 65 receptions, 1,215 yards, and 12 touchdowns. That's in his final 2 years combined. Legette, final year at South Carolina, 71 receptions, more than what Metcalf was able to put together in those final 2 years in Oxford. He had 1,255 yards, 40 more yards than what DK was able to do in that final 2 seasons down at Oxford. 7 touchdowns compared to 12. So less than DK. Now, DK did have 2 years to do it. And understand this, too. Legette was the primary option this past year with the injury to Juice Wells. And he showed you what he can potentially be in an NFL offense, but also as the guy. So DK didn't put up a ton of numbers at Ole Miss, then got to the NFL, became the guy, and has been a stud. You looked at Legette, didn't put up a ton of numbers until he did at the end of it as the guy. Maybe that's what he's going to be now carrying on into the NFL. So you want to compare him to DK Metcalf. Yes, the physical traits, the size, the speed, all that makes sense. But look at their college careers and then look at what DK has been able to do in the NFL. Now, that might be too much as far as expectations for Legette, but the expectations are high. When you trade him to the first round, get that 5th-year option, and you select him when there's other receivers who have a ton of talent too on the board, Carolina's expecting a lot out of Xavier Legette, and I'm excited to see what he can do here in Carolina. Now, let's get some more context. I've provided you with as much as I possibly can. One thing I also want to point out that I pointed out on Monday's show that I forgot to mention on this show, you talk about his development. He did play wide receiver in high school up until his junior year. Then he had to become a quarterback. A lot of times, small town high schools and just high schools in general put their best athlete at quarterback. That's what happened there at his high school in Mullins, South Carolina. But let's get some more context from somebody who covers the Gamecocks on a daily basis, just like your boy covers Carolina Panthers on a daily basis. Andrew Lyon, who is the host of Locked On at Gamecocks, going to join us on the other side to understand more about Xavier Legette and what the Panthers are going to get out of him and what his career was like down at South Carolina here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, and LED headlights. And whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts, your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash, for all the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, available to U.S. customers. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your receipt, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. And this past season, with the Hornets, I did go check out a game last minute with Gametime. Got some lower level seats for y'all, like $24. It was absolutely nothing. And unfortunately, we do not have playoff basketball here in Charlotte. But if you are in a market with playoff basketball, go check out Gametime. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, back here on Locked On Panthers, as promised. Andrew Lyon, the host of the Locked On Gamecocks podcast, which you can also check out on YouTube and wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Subscribe, follow the show for free everywhere. Follow him on Twitter at @Lion_SC. Also check out his work over at Gamecocks Digest, the SI subsidiary, as he covers the South Carolina Gamecocks in written form as well. Andrew, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, Julian, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I know a lot of excitement around the Panthers and obviously a lot of NFL teams after what happened with the NFL draft this past weekend. So glad to come on and talk about Xavier Legette for a little bit.
Yeah, excited to have you on. And also excitement for a lot of programs like South Carolina. We saw Legette get drafted, Spencer Rattler, Marcellus Dial. A great opportunity for those programs to say in recruiting, we're going to put you into the league. This is your dream. Come down to Columbia under Shane Beamer and get it done. But yeah, man, Legette, very interested to see how things are going to work out. He's an interesting pick. He wasn't my pick, as I told you beforehand, but I understand why they went with him, and I can see why they like Xavier Legette a lot. So first off, tell me, what are the Carolina Panthers getting in Xavier Legette as a wide receiver here?
Well, if you're looking for maybe an NFL comparison, if you're a Panthers fan, I would say that you're getting the next DK Metcalf, maybe a guy that's not quite as literally big as DK Metcalf is. Xavier Legette measures at around 6'1", maybe not quite as big weight-wise. But Legette, I mean, when you see him on the football field, immediately he just sticks out like a sore thumb compared to all the other wide receivers. I mean, he is built for his frame, and he's a guy that very fast, round 4.4, 40-yard dash, can run downfield, can go and get about any pass that you throw his way on shot plays. So essentially, he is a downfield threat. He can excel in the short passing game as well. A guy where if you throw him on a continuous route and you get him open over the middle of the field, he can be a real big-time yak threat as well in that Panthers offense. So Legette is essentially a guy where it's his athleticism and just the sheer physique that he possesses that really stands out amongst all the traits that he possesses.
Yeah, we've heard a lot about the DK Metcalf comparison, and it's fitting considering the coaching staff here in Carolina. Dave Canales spent the majority of his career in Seattle, and a lot of staffers have now left Seattle with Pete Carroll retiring and come to Carolina, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So I've heard those comparisons, and I think in a way it's fair based off of the college production. It's not like Metcalf was the number one guy there in Oxford at that point in time. A.J. Brown was the top receiver. And we've gotten to the league, and we've seen A.J. Brown is still the better receiver than DK Metcalf. Van Jefferson, was down there at the same time. Dawson Knox is down there. DeMarcus Lodge, who we haven't heard from since he left Ole Miss, was the number 2 guy. And Metcalf had pretty, not pedestrian, but 1,200 receiving yards in his final 2 years. That's what Legette just put up in one season. So that comparison may be fair. Now, getting to the college production, Legette did nothing, man, for like 4 years, just looking at it on paper and even watching some of the games. I have a lot of friends who went to South Carolina. My girlfriend went to South Carolina, so I'm pretty active watching the Gamecocks. And in this past year, it just blew up. Like, where did this come from? Like, what was going on those first 4 years to where it took this long for it to click for Legette?
Well, Julian, I think that it's kind of multifaceted. So, in terms of why he got off to a slow start in his college career, obviously you have to look at external circumstances sometimes with these guys. And with Legette, I think it's fair to say that a revolving door in the quarterback room and also at the offensive coordinator position probably did not help his case a whole lot. He had a new offensive coordinator and quarterback literally each of his first 4 seasons that he was here at South Carolina. And going into this past season, obviously, he knew it was his last chance because of the COVID year that he was provided because of NCAA eligibility rules and everything. So he goes and trains with San Francisco 49er superstar Deebo Samuel and seems to pick up more than a few things from him during his time over there on the West Coast. And South Carolina also brought in, yet again, a new offensive coordinator, this time in Dow Loggins. That name might ring a bell a little bit to Panthers fans because Loggins spent a long time in the NFL, 16 years, I want to say, 7 to 9 years as an offensive play caller. So he's been around the block. South Carolina was trying to run more of a pro-style scheme the past few years under new head coach Shane Beamer. And so Loggins comes in, fresh set of eyes, simplifies the terminology down a little bit, which obviously helped out Spencer Rattler a great deal as well. And Legette sort of got presented a great opportunity because Juice Wells, unfortunately, he should be in the NFL right now, let's be honest, but an injury held him back this past year. He wound up transferring to Ole Miss. Legette essentially becomes the number 1 receiver in the rotation, and he just took advantage of the opportunity that he was given. And so he got a chance to show everything that he's always possessed. He's always had a great work ethic. He's always had, again, the athletic and physical traits that you look for, but he hadn't quite been able to put it all together. I should also mention the Gator Bowl in the 2022 season against Notre Dame. That was sort of the breakout game for Xavier Legette. Made a couple big time grabs, 2 touchdown catches in that game. And I think that when that happened, and then you combine that with what Deebo taught him in the offseason and Dow Loggins coming in and his NFL experience, it all just kind of meshed together for a perfect storm. And Xavier Legette had obviously a one-off season that, we have not really seen from any college wideout in several years. And so I think that for Xavier Legette, he just had a great set of circumstances coming into this past year as far as his personal career, and it parlayed into him becoming a first-round pick for the Panthers.
Did anyone in Columbia see this coming? Like, did anyone at all?
No, I think that people would say that they saw Legette having a really good final season. When I say good, I'll say maybe anywhere from 600 to 800 receiving yards. Okay. You probably could have seen that. 1,200? No. And if anyone tells you they saw it coming, they're lying to you. Legette, look, even though it's not all on him, again, obviously external circumstances can hinder you at times as an athlete, but based on the previous 4 seasons, it certainly was not on anyone's mind that Legette could just put together this all SEC caliber year that he did this past fall. So needless to say, nobody saw that coming, including myself.
I'm trying to go back through the South Carolina quarterbacks that he would have played with. So Rattler the past 2 seasons, Jason Brown, aka the Water Boy, one of those years, Zeb Nolan, correct? Colin Hill, and am I missing anyone else?
Ryan Helinski.
Oh yeah, that God bless that kid. Everything he's been through. But yeah, not the best quarterback situation in college football. The past 2 years, Rattler. Now, I don't know if he ever reached like the potential that he had back in the day when people thought he might be the number 1 pick a couple years ago before losing his job at Oklahoma. And that whole situation this past weekend was ridiculous, in my opinion. That's quarterback play is important. And offensive line play also is important. And you can point to that and see how Legette may have had some struggles, at least showing what he showed this past season. I'm excited to see what he can do, special teams wise too. Like that, he's a guy that could come in and be a pretty good returner, right?
Returner, a gunner on punt team. Legette is basically one of those guys, and I know that for NFL fans, you might laugh at me for saying this because you could say this with any guy probably, but he is literally going to be willing to do about anything that coaching staff asks him. They tell him to do something, he'll go out there and do it. The guy's work ethic, I would say it's second to none. I think that, again, you could say that about a lot of NFL guys. There's a reason that they got there in the first place, but Legette, I just think, is a little bit different from where he comes from, the situation, the story that he has. He's been through a lot. And so I definitely think that Xavier Legette, when he gets to the NFL, when he starts training with the Carolina Panthers, that's not going to change at all.
I need you to clear something up for me. Was it a scooter or was it a motorcycle? Because I've heard about this accident that cost him 2 games, and then he earned the nickname Easy Rider from Pete Limbo, the former special teams coordinator. So clearly it wasn't like that big of a deal. But which one was it? Because I want to get it correct when I want to be on the show. Scooter or motorcycle?
I want to say it was a moped.
Okay.
Because a lot of the guys, they'll just use mopeds just to go from one place to the next if they're playing for the football team. So I want to say it was a moped. I don't think it was a motorcycle, but with Legette, I mean, who knows? You could see that as well. So you might want to still do a little bit more checking, but I'm pretty sure it was a moped.
Okay. Either way, in the contract, no more of that. Whatever you were on, no, we're not doing that. We can't afford any more time off. But it wasn't that serious. He missed 2 games, came back, I think immediately had like a kickoff return that year. It's exciting to hear about this guy, his story. I mean, losing his parents, and he did play receiver for a period of time in high school. Then had to, because it's a small town, and this oftentimes happens in high schools. You put your best athlete there, quarterback, so that may have played into a little bit of his development slowing. I don't know. Do you buy into that? Because for me, I don't think receiver. Yes, obviously there's nuances. I don't know if it's that difficult to go from having played receiver then quarterback then back to receiver. How do you feel that might have hindered or helped his development? I don't know.
I think that it could certainly help, hand-eye coordination, ball skills. Certainly you can parlay that between wide receiver and quarterback. I think it's a little bit easier if a guy, say, plays wide receiver to go to DB, or maybe plays DB or safety, and you put them at quarterback or wide out. But so yeah, definitely unique, but I could certainly see how maybe that also, like you said, that could have maybe slowed down his development early on in South Carolina and just took him a couple of years to get things figured out. But yeah, I think playing multiple positions is great for guys like Legette when they're coming out of high school.
His accent, like just delightful. I don't know how this escaped me for so long, because I can tell you, weekly during the fall, we'll sit with Gamecock fans and watch them just wallow in their self-pity of not being on top of the SEC like they were with Steve Spurrier. And I somehow missed hearing Legette talk. Like, I love it. You had to enjoy like having to cover a guy like that for these last couple of years. Just, he might not be producing, but anytime he speaks, just his personality, I love it.
Oh, it's great, Julian. I'll give you one funny little bit before we head on. But so he had scored a really long touchdown against Mississippi State. I believe it was the crossing route, the one that everybody sees in his highlight reels, like 70, 80 yards. You haven't seen it, go watch it, first of all. But secondly, after the game, we're talking to him and, just asked him, like, what did you see on that play? And Xavier, just to keep it short, part of his answer involved him saying, I just saw that straight green grass, man. You certainly can't, I can't replicate it. It's hard to replicate, but the PD region in South Carolina, it's just different down here. That's probably the best way I could put it with that.
It's incredible. And it's so right for him to be sticking in the Carolinas, coming to Charlotte and taking over a role potentially one day as maybe the number 1 guy at the wide receiver spot here in Carolina. But Andrew, appreciate your time. Y'all make sure to check out Andrew Lyon over on Locked On Gamecocks. Get even more perspectives. I'm sure he's gonna be talking more about Legette and the recent draft picks there from South Carolina on his show. Follow him on Twitter at @ALion_SC. Check out Gamecocks Digest for all his writing. If you're a South Carolina baseball fan, Gamecocks back in the top 15. They're in the D1 baseball poll. Probably set the host there this coming weekend or this year at Founders Park, if it's still called Founders Park. So good times going down there with the Gamecocks as spring football's over and they got baseball season full swing. So appreciate you, Andrew, for hopping on here on Locked On Panthers.
Absolutely, Julian. Thank you.
All right, take a quick pause. We'll come back here and wrap up the show. We've all been there before, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure you or your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep, lift your head up, and say to yourself, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friend's money as I possibly can. That's right. The smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches in the biggest empire. It's Monopoly you love, but on your phone anytime with tons of new twists, including leaderboards. Compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. Play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards. Make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks by wrecking ball. Charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chest and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. Shout out to Andrew Lyon for joining us here on the show today. That's my hope, is to get our Locked On College host to come on and talk about the recent draft prospect. Thought he gave us some pretty good insight into Xavier Legette's career and some of the things that may have held him back there, and him breaking out and no one in Columbia seeing it. They saw a breakout, 600, 800 yards like you brought up. They did not see 1,200 and being a second-team All-SEC receiver and a first-round pick in the NFL draft. So a great story for Xavier Legette. Lost his parents, struggled with injuries, and just struggled with the quarterbacks and just different wide receiver coach, just his development in South Carolina, then finally getting some stability, a new OC too, that helped him out in an NFL scheme, and he broke out when he got the opportunity. So glad to have him here in Carolina, and hope that what we saw last year is what we're going to see moving forward. Maybe not this upcoming season. I definitely don't expect that, but down the road by year 3, if Deontay Johnson's gone, but certainly Adam Thielen's gone, he can be that type of guy for Bryce Young in this offense, coached by Dave Canales. So that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Fridays throughout the offseason, I'm here on the show answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions, either at me or DM me to get those questions into me now for this Friday's show. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole as always, and forever keep pounding. And I'll talk to y'all on Wednesday or Thursday. I can't remember which day, but I'll talk to you soon.